All right, so today, guys, we are going to be looking at the games of the latest qualifier for the 2022 Candidates Tournament. Anyone know who today qualified for the candidates? Yeah, Duda, indeed, Jan Krzysztof Duda from Poland, #1 Polish player. Actually, he's only 23 years old. I kind of thought he was a little bit older, but 23 is still very young. He was, of course, kind of like a super talent when he was, growing up. But he's been 2,700 for, I think, a few years now. And always considered a very, very strong player. But this will be his first time qualifying for the candidates. The other qualifier who I guess made it yesterday is Karyakin. Yeah, the top two in the World Cup qualify. Karyakin, I think, beat Fedoseev yesterday, or maybe the day before. And he qualifies as well. Very unfortunate for Fedoseev because, of course, Magnus is obviously in the World Championship match. Even if he loses the match, the loser of the match will get a spot in the candidates as well. So whether Magnus loses or Nepo loses, the loser will be in the candidates tournament next year. But that means for this cycle, if Magnus wins the World Cup, he doesn't get a spot. It would go to the third place finisher, which means that had Magnus won the match against Duda, then the next spot would go to either Duda or Fedoseev. They would play a match against each other to decide the spot. But because Duda won, that means Duda and Karyakin qualify, and now Fedoseev has to play Magnus for third place, but doesn't have the chance to qualify via the World Cup anymore. So a bit unfortunate for him. I'm sure he was rooting for Magnus to win that match, but what can you do? Iran had some very good performances by like Tabatabaye, and Puya Adani also did super well. Of course, you guys probably heard about the kids from Uzbekistan who totally crushed it. Sam Shanklin did amazing. And a lot of these guys will qualify for the FIDE Grand Prix, so they'll get another chance there. I think 2 spots from the Grand Prix, which is a kind of tough set of tournaments. Usually those are like filled with 2,700s and only the top 2 qualify. So it's hard to qualify from there, but at least another chance for those guys. So what I'm going to be doing today is actually showing you guys some of Duda's games from the World Cup on his way to qualifying. We're actually going to look at all of his wins other than against Magnus, because I imagine a few of you guys probably just watched, or saw the game from today. If not, you should definitely check out their tiebreak match. It was very, very interesting. But I figured I'd just show you guys some of his games because they were pretty interesting. Some very impressive moments from each of his matches. And one thing I actually didn't know, but until I just looked at his games, he actually hasn't lost a game in the World Cup. He beat a few of his players just like in the classical games, and he also won in the tiebreaks. He won in the tiebreaks against Magnus today, of course. He also won the tiebreak match against Grischuk. And against everyone else, he actually defeated them in the first 2 games. In the 2 classical games, you play one with white, one with black. He won a few white games and just advanced in his matches. I'll be showing you guys some of the cooler moments from his games. Let me actually pull up the first one. I'll have you guys guess some of his moves and maybe get a sense for his style. Very, very strong player, as you guys will see. Okay, in the first match, of course, he had a bye in round 1, as a lot of the top players did. So he was automatically seeded in round 2. So in his first match, but in the round 2 game, he was paired against Guillermo Vasquez, who I believe is a grandmaster. Although he's actually, let me confirm. I'm pretty sure he's a gem. I know he's over 2,500 FIDE. Oh no, he's actually an IM. Yeah, this is why I confused. This guy is an IM, but he's 25, 27 FIDE, so he's basically like Grandmaster strength and a very strong player. And this is the game that Duda won. So they drew their game when Duda was black in the next round. This was the first round of their match. Duda wins this game, I think, in really, really nice fashion. Okay, let me just take you guys through the opening. This was Rogozin defense, very solid opening. Bishop g5, h6, bishop h4, castles, e3, bishop f5, queen b3. Black gives up the bishop pair, but usually has a pretty, gets a pretty solid game. Knight d7, bishop e2, c6, queen a3, g5, bishop g3, knight e4. Here white goes knight d2. I mean, this is like modern chess nowadays. You know, white offers the knight on d2, says go ahead and take, I'll take with my king. The center is still very closed. White gets an unopposed dark squared bishop, and black doesn't really have any way of taking advantage of white's king, right? Like if knight f6, white can play f3 in this kind of position, control the e4 square, and it's going to enjoy small advantage, the pair of bishops. Instead, black takes on g3, h6, g3, queen to f6, and here's the first moment I'll ask you guys to think about for a bit. White to play. How should white continue from here? Give you guys, let's say 2 minutes for this one. The questions aren't going to be too hard for the most part, but at some point we will have to calculate something. This one is more just about your positional intuition, how you would continue from here. Make sure to send me your messages via private chat. Actually, let me just close the chat so you guys don't get confused. Okay, let me know what you would play here, guys, if you haven't already. Got some good suggestions here. Okay, now one move that would be, I think, very risky for white, that might appeal, is castling queenside. Now, it is logical, right? Black has already weakened themselves with h6, g5. You want to double up with rook h2, rook dh1. But usually when this bishop is kind of cutting the king on this diagonal, very, very scary for white to allow this, like c5, some rook to c8. I would be pretty worried to do this with white. If you can get your king to like a1 very quickly, like immediately, like right now, then I would say, okay, very playable. But yeah, I think just black immediately goes c5, rook c8, and it's we're very slow with white here. It is a thing that happens in lots of like Queen's Gambit decline positions, where like we castle queenside, but usually not when black can kind of open the c file this quickly. Like if white had a knight on c3, for example, this would be kind of better, but here it's really tough. Yeah, and Andy's pointing out dc5, you can already just like take and rook c8, and it's bad news. Okay, the right move that Duda plays, a few of you guys suggested, is g4, which is a really nice positional move. Now black's bishop is forced to move, and the point, okay, bishop g6 hangs the h6 pawn, so bishop h7, so transfer the knight to f1. And knight comes to g3, and then white kind of tries to fight for these squares f5, h5. So the game continued king g7 to defend the pawn, knight g3, bishop g6, so that black can just trade off the knight. And now a move that a few of you guys suggested previously, bishop d3, looking to possibly trade the bishops. Though, as we'll see, Duda does not want to trade on g6, because then black takes with the pawn and kind of dominates our knight, opens the f-file. Instead, we'll see him plant this bishop on f5. Okay, so rook f8, rook d1, knight b6. We'll just play through a few more moves here, but I think white kind of gets kind of small, let's say, strategic advantage. Rook d2, knight d6, queen b4, rook e8, bishop f5. Now he's kind of well, he's actually offering a pawn here, but let's just take a look at the tactics. The point is, black can never take this one with the bishop because of knight h5, right? So Black cannot take this one. Yeah, small edge for white, although it does feel like he's kind of in control of the game. And what we'll see is that he does a really good job of exactly this, like controlling the game, slowly improving his position, and not really letting black kind of equalize at any point. Here he goes b3, just dominating the knight, rook h8. And okay, next moment here, let's put 2 minutes on the clock. White to play. How should white continue in this position? Send me your answers. Okay, so yeah, a couple of suggestions for knight h5 check. Let's take a look at this one. My feeling on knight h5 is black takes the knight. We take with the rook. And yeah, let's see. If we take this one, gf, and we play something like king f6, white goes g4. I could see white putting a little bit of pressure here, like rook e4, white goes f3, and then like king d2, rook h2, black will put the king on back on g7. I'm not totally sure if white gets like a real advantage here. Maybe white, we can just say, is like slightly better, but might be hard to break through kind of with like only, let's say, one weakness that we're targeting. And then black's other rook is kind of free to move around and do different things. So I feel like white does have to keep, let's say, some minor pieces on the board. Duda plays f3. The idea behind this one is to control e4 square, not letting black use this one for the knight on d6. Also, he's improving the king, right? He just wants to play like king f2, just defend this pawn. And okay, we'll see how he starts maneuvering here. Now black plays b6. I would say very reasonable move, just creating a break and hoping for counterplay. Duda takes. I think the engine just says like white should just go king f2, allow black to take on a5, and then play like rook c2, rook hc1. And this kind of makes sense because of course all of black's pawns are weak. Once white wins one pawn back, the other pawns are still going to remain very weak. And yeah, I can definitely see white having a big advantage here, but okay, we should respect the 2700s play as well. So he takes rook b8, takes on g6, fg. My guess is he just felt like, okay, there's nothing more he can do, so he keeps the knights on the board, king f2, rook takes b6, rook c1. Now offering black to take on b3, but then of course he takes here and is going to be attacking the knight and the pawn. And then if knight c4, what do you guys think white is playing here? Because e3 is hanging. Yeah, okay. A few of you guys mentioned e4. Of course, white plays, undermining the knight and also pushing this pawn forward. So rook e6, black stays solid, rook c2, king f7. Little trick. If rook takes c6, what happens here? Yeah, knight e4 check, or black just takes, and then knight e4, we lose the exchange. So rook to c3, knight b5, rook d3, knight d6. Now some shuffling occurs. He goes rook e1, a5, rook h1, king g7, rook a1, rook b5, and now rook c3. Now that black kind of blocks the knight from using this b5 square, he switches back over to c3. Black goes knight b7, rook a c1, rook b6. Okay, white to play, 2 minutes. How to continue from here? Let me know in the chat. We have a small advantage, but we need to keep pushing. Okay, 10 seconds, guys. Make sure get your move in if you haven't already. Of course, in a game, I would want you to spend more time on all these positions, but this is just kind of asking for your kind of first instincts. Okay, so a lot of you guys suggested this plan of rook c2, followed by knight e2, knight c1, knight to d3. I think it is actually quite a reasonable idea. It's nice to improve our pieces. Then knight can like jump to e5 or c5. Let's take a look. So against this plan, yeah, I mean, I think it's a very reasonable idea here. Maybe black can mess with you a little bit, like knight d6. Okay, again, we can't take on c6, knight e2, and like knight b5. And then if like rook goes to d3, we're like blocking the knight. If rook goes to c5, then this knight moves, and b pawn will be kind of in trouble. So maybe knight d6 here, for example, knight c1, and then white has a hard time improving from here, because rook c3 again, black just goes knight to b5. Wait, sorry, a5 pawn is hanging. I don't want to drop this one. Yeah, maybe we play here and knight b7. Yeah, I definitely agree. White keeps an edge here, 100%. Yeah. So this is a nice idea. I mean, it's clear, like once you double your rooks on the c file, it's kind of time to improve the knight, right? The knight has no future on g3, but Duda does it in a different way. He just pushes e4, and we'll see that he's actually just trying to take space. He wants to get the pawn to e5. If black takes on e4, then white takes probably with the pawn, is my guess. This didn't happen in the game. Then he kind of gets a nice center and then prepares to maybe go e5, knight e4, and kind of dominate the c5 square this way, or maybe at some point push d5, kind of break through like this. So you'd have to be very careful before pushing d5 because, of course, the pawn gets isolated. You want to make sure you can properly support it. I think more likely might be e5, knight e4, knight c5. This kind of approach. That said, guys, those of you that came up with this plan, bring the knight to d3, definitely very reasonable idea. I think white keeps a small advantage here for sure. So now e4, and black plays knight d6, which to me looks very logical. The engine suggests knight d8 as the best move. And if anyone can explain this move to me, I would be very impressed because it's really not obvious why this move is the engine's choice. There is actually a clear point to it. Yeah, actually, Gary, Annika, you guys are pretty close. The point is black wants to move the rook and royal exactly, and then get the knight to e6, which makes a ton of sense given white's plan is to push e5. Right, black goes rook e7 here, and then knight e6, and puts pressure on d4, gets access to this f4 square. Why is that hard to see? I don't know. I mean, just looking at this position, yeah, it's just very odd to play knight d8 here, right? Like, just putting the knight, it just looks so passive. And my guess is that black maybe didn't even consider this move. I don't know. Maybe with enough time, you would kind of figure it out. But yeah, first instinct is, I think, to do what black did, like knight d6, just kind of more active. But yeah, the knight on e6 is a very, very good piece. So yeah, point of knight d8 is to move the rook from e6, bring the knight to e6, and then you're putting pressure on d4 and also controlling this f4 square. So it's kind of a nice outpost for the knight. Yeah, so knight d6 played, e5, knight b5, rook d3, rook a6, and now knight e2. So finally Duda is improving the knights. He plans to break with f4 and break the blockade. So this is why we kind of say, like, rooks aren't very good blockaders. Knights are better blockaders because rooks can be attacked, right, by knights, and their lives can get very uncomfortable. Whereas if this was a knight on e6, then okay, black just trades the knight or puts the king on e6 and is doing fine. But now the knight is coming to f4 and white is breaking through. So a4 played, takes, f4, takes, rook goes back, rook takes c6, rook takes d4. And okay, now kind of a critical moment. So let me give you guys some time here to think about it. I'll give you 3 minutes because there's actually some stuff we need to calculate here. White to play. Try to actually think about this one. This is less about positional judgment, more about just concrete calculation. White to play. How can we create some winning chances here? Okay, so yeah, a lot to calculate here. Of course, in a game, if you have time, you should spend a lot of it here because, few pieces remaining, lots of pawns could possibly get traded here. If we don't find something very concrete, then of course black will be able to hold the game. So yeah, if you guys found the key line, now the engine's choice is just like quiet move rook to f3, which threatens knight e6 check. And there's some concrete stuff here. Rook takes g6, also hanging. But I like Duda's solution very much. He takes on d4, rook takes d4, rook c7 check. Now king f8, king h8, of course, runs into knight takes g6 check. So black plays king to g8. And now knight takes d5. So very well calculated here. His point is that on rook takes e5, he has knight f6 check, king h8, rook h7 mate, king f8, knight d7 picks up the rook. So after knight takes d5, white is keeping an extra pawn, and very big advantage here for white, not just the extra pawn, his rook and knight are also obviously a lot more active, and his king is not cut off, which means he's able to use his king as well. So this all gives white a decisive edge. So black plays king f8. I think this was the best try. Now knight f4, threatening g6, g5, knight g6, king g8, and just king e3. He just brings the king in, and it's kind of like very nice domination, like very hard for black to mess with white's coordination here. Knight e6 just trades off the rooks and wins the knight endgame, brings the knight to f5, hitting this one, knight f4, g3, knight d5 check, king e4, knight c3, king d4. King just comes in and he doesn't even go after the h6 pawn, just works to bring the king in and just win thanks to the e pawn. Black gives some checks, and after king c6, I think black resigns here because, let's see, next, for example, if knight e4, what does white play here, guys, real quick? Yeah, just knight d6, forcing the knight trade, pawn takes, and game over. And if knight d3, then king d6, black's knight has no more checks, it's kind of dominated. And next white is like just pushing e6, say here, knight g7, e7, and promoting, or king d7 if the knight moves away, and then e6, and yeah, the pawn runs through. So excellent technique, and we saw a lot of really good technique from Duda in this in his run. Let's just jump to the next game against Sam Sevian. This one in here. And let's start from this moment. White to play in this position. I'll give you guys a sec here to take a look at what's going on. Again, we have an endgame, very close to equal, but we could say white is slightly better, probably due to the structure. Black has a couple of isolated pawns. White's pawn's not isolated, right? A little bit easier to defend. But still, it takes very, very good technique to actually win this one. Yeah, another rook and knight ending. Something I noticed about his games is that he's just like very technical player, very good at like improving his position slowly without letting his opponent, let's say, trade pieces and equalize. But when he needs to be precise, his calculation is very, very good. So kind of a good recipe to be a 2700 player. Great positional play, great endgame technique, and extremely good calculation. If you guys get all that, I guarantee you will be 2700 as well. Okay, white to play, 2 minutes. What should you do in this position? Okay, guys, make sure to get your ideas in. How can white improve their position from here to try and convert this? And yeah, I'm seeing a lot of, let's say, concrete ideas like f4, g4, g5, b4. But actually, we're looking for just quiet improvement to white's position, meaning not doing anything forcing, just improving the position before looking for any kind of forcing continuations. So, of course, there's lots of pieces white can improve here, like rook on a1 isn't particularly active, so some move like rook ac1 absolutely makes sense. But Duda starts with king d1. And the idea here is to just put the king on c2 and kind of defend his one weakness in the position. And then the knight is kind of free to move. For example, yeah, knight c4, the knight can get into the game. And well, it's just a very simple idea. You defend your one weakness so that the rest of your pieces can start working. And in the meantime, it's not easy for black to do the same, right? The king on d6 obviously gets hit with knight to c4. Black also has kind of few more weaknesses than white does. So this is like a typical technique. It's hard to say, like, you can't just 100% do this in every position, but it's like a typical, let's say, operation where you just use your king to defend your pawns, and then the rest of your pieces are free to kind of move around. So let's see what happens. Rook b5, king c2, knight e5. He goes a4, rook a5, now knight c4. So he forces the trade of knights, takes, rook takes, and it's a very pleasant rook endgame for white because black just has few more weaknesses to defend. Now he doesn't play this one perfectly according to the engine, but I think what he does is very interesting. So rook e1, engine suggests like rook c1 here, and then trying to just double up on the c5 pawn, which makes a lot of sense. But rook e1, rook e3, he kind of goes this way. Black plays rook to d4, rook c3, king d6, and now rook d3 trading a pair of rooks. Takes, takes, black goes rook a6, and now b4, takes, takes. Okay, so the evaluation of this position is that it's equal. With best play, black is holding. But it's not that easy, and we'll see Duda kind of finds a little chance and grabs it. So black plays king c7 here, and here Duda plays the move rook to b5. Okay, so what's his idea? Why isn't this pawn just hanging? What does white want here? Yeah, he wants to go rook h5 and then take on h7. He's arguing that his h-pawn is going to be much more dangerous than black's a-pawn. Now, according to the engine, black could have taken this one. Then rook h5, the king has to defend the f-pawn, takes king e7, and black is holding here. Rook h8, a5, h5. Black gets enough. I think this move f5 can be played at some moments so that the king can get into f6. But can anyone explain why Sevian maybe didn't want to go in for this continuation? I would say it's not really exactly a chess reason, but what would be, why would black maybe does not want to go in for these lines with rook a4, rook h5? What could possibly be the reason for that? Now, I don't know myself. I mean, Sevian is extremely strong grandmaster. I'm sure he has his reasons and was calculating quite a bit here. I should say actually one thing that's very important. Of course, you guys don't know this, but this is move 40, rook to b5. So this is black's 40th move. I don't know exactly if he's in time trouble, but I can look it up actually because I'm curious what was the time situation at this point. Actually, I can't see exactly how much time they had, but I can tell you guys he spent 4 minutes on this move, so he didn't really have a lot of time. He had some time, but not a lot of time. Okay, so yeah, some good answers here. It's easier to hold the other way. It looks like it's holding after a normal move. It looks risky, and other moves might be safer. It looks unsafe. Yeah, exactly right. It's like you're defending this rook endgame. It's 5 versus 5. Of course, it has to be equal, right? Like all rook endgames are drawn, as they say, and like there are lots of rook endgames when you're down a pawn and you're still holding. Like, yeah, realistically, black has to be okay here. But there is something psychological about going for these types of positions because, like, it might be kind of complicated. It might be difficult for black to hold. You might have to find a series of only moves. It feels like white has the better chances, right? Because his h-pawn, kind of feels more secure and his king is a little bit more active. Obviously, you don't know the engine evaluation, right? So no one is telling you, like, oh, it's completely equal here. And it's also move 40. So a lot of players on the 40th move, they typically don't want to make any kind of like big decision, right? Like if you allow rook h5, this is something you kind of want to calculate, as deeply as you can, just to really make sure that you're holding. I would say it's also maybe not even possible to calculate all the way. It's kind of like a judgment call. Again, I don't want to speak for Sevian here. Honestly, I have no idea. I'm sure it could be a million different things that influence the decision, but this is something that happens to a lot when players are defending a position and they're slightly worse. You want to keep it solid, right? You don't necessarily want to allow these like kind of sharp complications. You don't really know, and you might be walking into a bad position. So he ends up playing this move e5, which a few of you guys suggested, and looks like a very solid move, just cutting off the rook from going to h5, but actually runs black into some issues. So white plays a5, and now on king c6 here, of course, what's white's idea after this move? Okay, a few of you guys are saying king c4. I actually think king c4, black will go king d6, and is kind of okay. And if the rook moves, let's say, to b8, then black is taking on a5, and black is, again, okay there. Yeah, like rook b7, black goes king e6. But yeah, I think his point was to go rook to d5. And then black is a little bit stuck, right? Has to play king to c7, and then white is going f4. And here black starts to experience problems because white is starting to like take a pawn. If black takes this one, white goes gf, and the rook on the 5th rank is just very, very unpleasant. You can swing over to h5, the king can walk over to b4 and defend this one. And yeah, I mean, it's now black's pawns start to look pretty unpleasant. King c4, I would say not as good, just because black goes king d6, and then rook d5, king e6. So the point is now like f4 doesn't really threaten to win the pawn, so black isn't forced to take. Actually, you're right. There is king b5 here. No, good point. Good point. This one I missed. Yeah, king b5 is good. So okay, in that case, on this one, let's say black drops back. And ouchie for black, exactly. And then f4, I think rook e6, black can still try to hold like this. Rook c5, let's say this one, king b5, rook d6. I think not as great for white, because black's rook can get active like this. Yeah. Still, though, white is starting to push one way or the other. Okay, so e5, black goes rook d6 check. And now question for white. where to go. 2 minutes, white to play. Okay, get your answers in if you haven't already. Yeah, so a lot of you guys wanted rook d5 here. Now, of course, we have to be very careful before going for the king and pawn endgame. So, for example, takes, and then like, okay, we want to get this in. Now, this I understand, right? Like king is coming into f5 and white is very active here. And if h5, we have like f3, g4. That looks very unpleasant for white. But yeah, maybe black goes f5. Yeah, as Davis says, exactly. And then like king c4, king d6. Very hard to judge, right? It's like we got to count tempi there, and who knows what's happening. But black has a lot of moves in reserve: f6, h6, h5, and so on. So this one is tricky. I also don't like it because it feels like, you know, on rook d5, like black can trade, but black can also avoid the trade, right? With something like rook c6. And it's like, yeah, black will only trade if it's good for them, but for white's point of view, not a lot of upside. Okay, Duda plays king e3. And for those of you that did not suggest this move, well, try to understand it. Where is this king going? What is the plan from here? So black now plays a6, rook b3, rook c6, and here is where white needs to show the winning plan. Yeah, king f3, exactly. He takes his chance and just runs towards the h-pawn. Kind of similar to that one famous king and pawn endgame played by Rubinstein. I don't know if you guys probably saw it at some point. Maybe some of you remember Rubinstein's opponent in that game, where the king just runs towards, well, he's playing black, runs towards white's h2 pawn. And yeah, now black has to deal with this weakness getting attacked. So let's see how the game progressed. Black played rook c4. White goes rook b6. Very strong move. I think he already calculated what was going to happen from here. Now he's hitting everything, so black is forced to play rook c6. And he takes this one. Now, if we had more time, I would have you guys sit and calculate this one, but I think you could do it. It's really just a matter of counting, you know, white's moves and black's moves. And let's see what happens. So it takes h5, push, king g7. Black promotes first, but we evaluate this endgame as being good for white because the king is just so much closer to the pawns. So even though black gets the first move here, obviously if white starts taking kingside pawns, it's going to be very, very bad for black. Now black plays queen e1 here, hitting both of the pawns. If we trade a bunch of pawns, then black is making his draw. But Duda finds a very accurate way to continue here. I have no idea if he saw this ahead of time or if this was just, you know, super GM judgment and he figured, you know, he would have something. I'm not sure, but he finds the most precise way. So he starts with queen e8 check. Black goes king to c5. And if, let's say, black played this move, then one thing white would do is play queen b8, queen c8, and then put the queen on f5. And then both pawns are defended, and then the king is just mopping up. But black goes king c5. So queen c8, king d4 doesn't quite work the same because black is possibly taking this one. Although maybe that white can consider going for that king and pawn game as well, although king f3, black is going to get some counterplay. So instead, what to do in this position? Yeah, so we have two pawns under attack. and white defends both of them with queen a4. Really, really beautiful move, defending this one and defending this one in view of queen a7 check. So very nice resource. I think queen a8 is pretty similar, though the difference here is like black can play king d4 and go after this one. So I think queen a4 is a little bit more precise, just to cut the king off. And now black is not stopping white from taking these pawns. Queen e2, white gives queen a7 check now, queen b6, and gives some more checks. And yeah, finds a way to take pawns with check. Lots of checks, and then puts the queen on f5. Just brutal move, defending everything. And yeah, black's kingside pawns end up following. Nice trick here by Sevian. Of course, king takes e5 would run into mate, but yeah, Duda avoids it and ends up winning the queen endgame. Okay, so really, really well played endgame here. I want to show you guys one more example. I know we're out of time, so if you gotta go, that's okay. But for those of you that want to stick around, I want to show you one more that I felt was really impressive. Let's jump to his game against Vidit. So after Sevian, he then defeated Iranian GM Buya Edani. Then he beat Grischuk in the tiebreaks, although that match was kind of back and forth. And then he faced Vidit in the, I want to say the quarterfinal, before facing Magnus in the semifinal. Okay, so this is Duda's game against Vidit, and they had like a very theoretical opening that left white in this endgame when he was where he gets a knight for 3 pawns. And objectively, this one is supposed to be drawn, but as we'll see in this game, I mean, very difficult for black to hold it. Basically, you have to play like a machine. Okay, white to play. How should white proceed from here? Yeah, again with the rook and knight. The dude really loves rook and knight endgames. All right, 3 minutes. I'll give you guys some time to think about it here. How should white proceed? Okay, yeah, this one's pretty tough, but I just found Duda's play very impressive here, so I just wanted to share with you guys. Of course, lots of players want to play like king f3 here, for example, just to stop rook e2, and okay, try to control the position. Black's idea is to go either king f6 here, maybe king h6 is better, avoiding knight checks, to push g5 and get the pawns going. So Duda plays kind of more aggressive move, knight to d3. And a couple of ideas here. Number one, the knight can threaten to go to f4. So black plays like rook e2 check, for example, king f3, rook d2, king e3, and then the knight is coming to f4, and white is already winning a pawn. And if black loses one of these pawns, then that's going to be pretty bad, as the queen side will one day fall as well. But instead, black plays g5, and stopping knight f4. And now Duda kind of shows his idea. He plays knight b4, so going after the a6 pawn. And now black has to decide whether he wants to play rook e2 check and take on b2, or play rook a8, kind of defend passively, or play for c5. And one of these moves, I think, draws. The other two basically lose. And it's like a very hard choice. Even if you know that one of them is drawing, it's really hard to decide, right, without just calculating like an absolute machine. Maybe I'll give you guys a chance to just intuitively guess here which of these moves is holding for black. Really not easy to just intuitively figure it out, but okay, it just shows how difficult the game is. So what do you guys think? Okay, so far you guys guessed better than Vidit, so that's pretty cool. So yeah, rook a8 is pretty passive. This one is not going to work out. White goes like rook e1, for example, knight d5, and yeah, black's pawns start to get picked off. c5 indeed is the right move. So knight takes a6, you have rook a8. I mean, you are kind of losing a pawn. Knight c7, rook takes a5, knight e8 check. Say king g6, knight takes d6. But Engine says black gets enough here after rook a2, rook b1, and b4. And white simply is just not able to win or create any passed pawn here. Black just has a lot of counterplay tying white down to this one. Also, black is pushing these pawns on the king side, so not really enough for white to win the game. But very hard to kind of go for this. Like white plays c4, black has to be really accurate here to win this from here. So yeah, really not an easy decision. Because Vidit goes rook e2 check, which I would say, okay, most active move, and you start trading off pawns immediately. King h1, excuse me, the very nice move actually, because king f3 actually runs into some checks, so he kind of hides his king. Rook takes b2, and now key move for white needs to be found here, because if white is playing knight takes a6, black is going rook a2 and winning the a5 pawn. So white has to make, yeah, very important move in this position. Maybe overlooked by Vidit. Honestly, again, can't really speak for these players. They're very, very strong. I'm not sure, but I think if he kind of saw this one coming, he might not have been too happy with where the game is going. Yeah, rook to a1. Just like very cold-blooded move, defending the a-pawn in advance, and now white is getting knight takes a6. It's possible he missed white's follow-up idea, because black plays c5, knight takes a6, b4. Looks like black is getting his own pawns moving. And what to do? White to play from here. And maybe this is something that he calculated, right? If c takes b4, I think white might be able to play, or black might be able to play c4, right? b5, c3, b6, c2, and white's not really in time to push b7 because rook b1 is coming. Or he can take and then go rook b1. But what does white have instead on this move? Yeah, very good Andy, very good Nune. Yep, Davis, Sepper. Yeah, nice job. Yeah, Rohan, very good. White goes knight takes b4. Very, very nice resource. So c takes b4, a6, and black just can't stop the pawn with the rook. Like if rook e2, for example, white pushes, rook e8, white pushes, takes, and then the rook picks up one pawn, will pick up the rest of the pawns, and yeah, not enough for black. Yeah, you can probably play cb4 as well, but I think promoting is pretty straightforward. Actually, they're both very, very quick and straightforward. So black tried b takes c3, a7, c2, white promotes, rook b1 check, king g2. And black gets to promote as well, 3 pawns up, but black is completely lost because white gets the first check. And heavy piece endgames, you guys should definitely remember, are all about king safety. And usually in these endgames, whoever gets the first check ends up winning. There are a few exceptions, but the only exceptions are when you don't have a forced mate. So yeah, if white didn't have a forced mate here, then black would be doing really well. But unfortunately, after rook a7 check, black's king is just getting caught, and Duda chases this king down. Queen f3, rook c7, and notice doesn't even take the queen here. I mean, that would be a winning endgame, but it could get a little bit tricky. Queen versus rook, not easiest endgame to win. Also some fortress chances for black. Instead, he just calculates and finds a forced win with queen b7, queen a7, and queen b8, setting up the classic ladder mate, and that was game over. So very well played by Duda there. I mean, basically just kind of like perfect technical game. As you guys can see, had a lot of good endgames in this tournament. We didn't even see all of them. He also won an endgame against Grischuk. That was really well played. He won a kind of middle game endgame against Udani as well. But yeah, some very, very high class play. And then also just like really, really accurate, very precise calculation when he needed it. Okay, guys, that's going to wrap it up for this one. The World Cup was super fascinating. I mean, we looked at like 3 games today, but honestly, I mean, there's like so many super GMs there. And of course, you can download all the games from like, Chess24 or something and take a look at some of your favorite players. Yeah, I mean, there's always something to learn from, because all of the players he played are also like super strong grandmasters in their own right. And if there's anything to know about grandmasters is that it takes a lot to beat them. It's pretty tough. So to get a win against a GM, a strong GM, 2,700, you really have to come up with some interesting ideas. So these games are always kind of worth analyzing. Okay, guys, that's going to be it for today. We'll probably see you guys on Friday as well. Let's see, I think Magesh is teaching Friday, so that should be a good one too. And yeah, I'll see you guys then. Let me open up the chat real quick. You guys can hang out for a bit. And yeah, we'll look forward to the final and the third place match. Should be really interesting. Magnus versus Fedoseev, but also Duda versus Karyakin. Any predictions, guys? Who do you think will win? Duda or Karyakin? I mean, they both qualify now, so this final match is just for money and the official title. But yeah, any predictions? Anyone want to take a guess? I think Magnus will get third. Yeah, Magnus is a big favorite to get third place now. Duda will win for sure. Yeah, I mean, he hasn't lost a game yet. Karyakin lost a bunch of games, to Shanklin. So Karyakin has shown that he can bleed in these matches, but Duda so far kind of unstoppable. Would be really, going to be really cool to see him in the candidates and see how he does there. All right, guys, I will catch you all next time. Have a good one. Take care.